welcome to the first episode of the 5th year of Digging Up Positivity. This episode we cover various members of our community, both new ones and previous guests of the show with some updates. And there will be some news from nature and the wonderful world of animation. And if you would like to get your paws on the t-shirt I am wearing or any of the other Tabo merchandise, check the end of the video. As for now, let's get started with the charities. And this year we have a lovely kickoff when it comes down to furry charities with a New Year's Fur Ball. Together they managed to raise $1,029.15 for the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance. What a lovely way to start 2022. But besides the critters from Newark, USA, we also had Adler the Eagle and his crew working hard for Give Kids the World Incorporated. I dropped by at their stream a few times and the atmosphere was truly amazing. And in that weekend they all managed to raise $16,590 for this amazing charity. But this amazing first weekend of the year did not stop there. Painted Desert Furcon in Phoenix, Arizona joined the ranks with a whopping $12,338 raised for the Phoenix Herpetological Society, a non-profit organization dedicated to educating, rehabilitating and preserving native and non-native reptiles in Arizona, USA. And last but not least, we have Anthro Expo, where 669 attendees raised $7,777 for Chise Youth Services. They provide overnight shelter for those who are unfortunate enough to experience homelessness. They focus on the ages between 15 and 24, and everybody is welcome in their low barrier LGBTQ+ affirming safe space. Back in the early days, every week we saw a new webcomic coming around, and through time only a few managed to really make waves and survive. Some even became more. One of them is Lackadaisy, a comic set in the Prohibition era in St. Louis, America. The artwork of the comic always has been very strong, on par with the suburb comics such as Black Sad, and they are working on an animation. After a successful Kickstarter, they have been steadily releasing little bits and pieces to give insight in the production process in their animation blog. And judging from the animation, they really know what they are all about. A release date for this short is not yet known. Billi Billi is a big video platform, mostly known in Asia. Every year they host several awards. One of them is being the Billi Billi Animator Award. And in their latest edition, Piti Yindee won first prize with his now award-winning animated short Fossils, featured in an earlier edition of Digging Up Positivity. It's a short about a dog and a cat, Katie and Pingo, trying to dig up fossils, and all sorts of Tex Avery inspired loony and wacky antics ensue. Since we are on the topic of awards, when you talk about them in the fandom, two of them come to mind, and both are accepting nominations. First we have Ask Papa Bear, known for his advice column for young and old. This is the 4th time he is hosting the Good Furry Awards. Previous winners are amazing critters such as Tony Perret, known as Dogwomp, whose name lives on in countless of ALS charity drives. Ash Coyote, known from the Fandom documentary, and the very talented Cassidy Civet, also a previous guest on this show. You can submit your nominations with video fragments of them being possum for a possible video compilation on the Ask Papa Bear website up to the end of April 2022. And if all goes well, the awards will be presented in May in a certain convention in Reno, USA. The second big name are the Ursa Major Awards. Where Ask Papa Bear focuses mainly on the people within the fandom, the Ursa Major Award celebrates anthropomorphic works outside of the fandom as well. Ranging from novels to animations, they too have their submissions on their site. You can submit entries on their website up until February 12th. You can find the addresses from both sites in the description below. As an animation enthusiast, I have seen many of them, ranging from the wonderful to the downright terrible, and Bible stories always have been a little bit of an oddball. They can be good, just look at the Prince of Egypt, but there can be plenty of bad ones out there. I am guilty as charged by being part of one myself. Back in 1999, I was on the team responsible for Biblical Beast, an animated team Bible story series aired by the Dutch broadcast organization known as NCRV. But even with that low budget we had, looking back at me xeroxing thousands of animation frames, it does pale in comparison with Joshua and the Promised Land. An animation so infamous that Saberspark, a very well-known cartoon reviewer on YouTube, decided to reanimate it with the help of an awesome diverse team of other YouTube animators. And the result is quite awesome. Besides the released video, they also released a comparison video. Seeing all those different styles with their own little references and in-jokes and quirks makes it a really fun video to watch. Superheroes are a staple of geek culture. You can't go around them. They are everywhere, but never do you see anything about their pets. Well, the occasional mention here and there, but the people at DC found it time for a movie to focus on the superheroes' best friends, DC League of Super Pets. And here we can see how Superman's dog has quite some trouble fitting in with the other doggos. But in the end, he makes friends with some super-powered shelter animals. Will they save the day in the end? We might find out in May. And oh god, it sounds like a commercial, do I? But I am just so hyped about this one. It's like the Secret Life of Pets with superpowers. Back in 2017, the video game Cuphead was released and took the world by storm. Not just did it show that a difficult game could be wildly popular despite its difficulty, but the animation, it was just amazing. It did not just look like the typical rubber hose animation from the time, but they actually adopted many of the techniques that were a staple of the golden age of American animation. Frame by frame, it was hand-drawn, resulted in that feeling and atmosphere of those days gone by. So when the news hit about Netflix adopting it, reactions were mixed. Many did look forward to it, and recently the trailer got released, and from the looks of it, they did try to mimic the atmosphere of the game, but you can see they had to cut the budget. Understandably, they could not animate it hand-like they did in the game with those circumstances and budgets, but it really shows, especially to the more devoted animation fans. But despite this, I am going in with an open mind, and it will be released in February this year. Paws crossed for this one. Another area that features quite some critters from the furry fandom is the video game industry, and in November 2019 we featured Hungry Bear Games. We are switching to Score Chaser to tell us more.
If you remember a couple of years ago, we covered the release of the furry-made game Dogurai. Dogurai is a retro throwback game that combines elements of Mega Man and Ninja Gaiden with the nostalgic look and feel of a Game Boy game. Since its initial Steam release, we are happy to report that it is currently available as a limited physical release on the PlayStation 4 through Red Art Games. We are very happy for the team and congratulate them on their success. If you wish to play Dogurai, it is also available digitally on Steam, Linux, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation 4. The game's programmer wishes to add that he sends huge hugs to all the furries out there. The link for the physical game will be found down in the description below.
And of course, when it comes down to recurring guests, we have Johnsky S. You know him from the tunes at the end of every episode. But with even the best of us, sometimes you don't feel so good. And what happens if the happiness and motivation are just not there? It can happen to all of us. I am no exception. How to get through that valley to reach new heights that inspired him to make this new song. And of course, do check out this channel. It is being updated regularly and I love the chip tunes. From the games industry down to music, down to animation, we end up with robots. And here we have Freyfox, who is still going strong with his beetle weight bots Vega, Plucky and Sprocket. Last year Sprocket reached the top 16 in the Chatham Challenge belt, and in November the quarterfinals in the Bristol Beetleweight Championships. And that same month Plucky won the Gladiator Rumble in the Antweight World Series 62. Of course, all this success leads us to expect more, and more he is planning. Besides this terrible trio of bots, more builds are on the way. Be warned, Freyfox, we are watching you with great interest. The Dutch nature conservation organization Natuurmonumenten is putting a lot of effort in the wolves of the Netherlands. While part of our ecosystem once, they have been away for a while, but they made their glorious return in the more recent years. As part of the Natuurmonumenten's newest campaign, Let's Get Used to the Wolves Again, which aims to educate people about the wolves, their way of life and the impact of humans on their surroundings, they have released footage of what they suspect are new wolves. DNA research from their droppings will in time tell if they truly are, but in the meanwhile we have footage of those lovely big floofs. Yay! Well, for this month with Digging Up Positivity, our special guest is Chise, also known as that scientist that goes on Twitter trying to educate us tirelessly, day and night, with graphics, with actually understandable graphics and understandable bits and bytes about everything related to the vaccine. Welcome to the show, Chise.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
We are very curious about the person behind the science. So, tell us something about yourself.
So I have been in pretty much in this field for about a little over 10 years now. Been into vaccine research and development for about, I'd say, oh my goodness, probably the last 5 or 6 years I've been in this, working in this position. So it's quite an interesting field right now to be in, of course, with the current situation. It's really different now with the state of things to say, hey, yeah, I work in vaccine research. Mm-hmm. Whereas beforehand, working in this field, you were kind of just going on with your day and working on things and maybe, working on tuning the latest influenza vaccine, for the flu strain for the year, or working on a Zika vaccine, those kind of things. But now it's as if our profession has been kind of thrown into the spotlight right now. Yeah. Whereas more people know about my position and my job more so than ever before.
I am pretty sure that if I would ask you 5 years ago, where do you see yourself in 5 years, you would have never guessed this.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would say that I was probably, at my lab bench working on, various projects and experiments that were going on and going about my day. But yeah, this is a lot different. Whereas before I was on Twitter, kind of just doing my thing, talking to friends, posting some, things about my day, maybe, bits and pieces of my work here and there, but nothing super in depth. Because that just wasn't the way that things were at the moment. Whereas now, I still use Twitter to talk to people, but it's more so that my outreach has changed. Whereas now it's more so helping people, navigate the hesitancies and the unfortunate aspects of the situation at the moment, just trying to get them through it.
Yeah. I can completely understand because, to be honest, I myself do trust the science, and the only thing to refute science is better science, in my view.
Absolutely.
But I must admit that it has been extremely difficult to navigate around and actually find the proper information and find the proper questions. Especially because, well, of course, the current situation is extremely polarized. And if you start to ask questions about the vaccine, often you get a response where you're immediately being pushed in that corner, even though that a lot of people are having a lot of valid questions, and which you are trying your best in order to answer on your Twitter. So I do recommend people to check it out. A lot of people in the fandom are trying to look forward to, for example, the next convention. You see a lot of people that are trying to set up the conventions again. Recently we had Nordic Furcon, and unfortunately though they had to cancel because of the current situation. How do you see the next couple of years?
I know it's really hard to kind of predict what things will be like, and I know there are some scientists that, will go on either TV or a podcast or radio, and they'll start giving predictions as to what they might think will happen. Now, if I had to guess, of course, I think all of us wish that we had a crystal ball and that we would be able to predict what's going to happen. And the thing is that unfortunately, we're not always able to, because we as humans, and even scientists, even though we have a ton of knowledge about this and we're always learning something new, unfortunately, we can't predict or control. I should say we can't control what this is going to do. We can control it in certain aspects where, people establish immunity, they get protected, they get vaccinated. Those kind of things help make this so it's not so detrimental to someone. But if I had to predict where we're going to be, I think when we step out of a pandemic phase and we maybe go into an endemic phase, an endemic meaning, that it is circulating, but it's not causing, cases soaring constantly on a daily basis or weekly basis. It's not causing hospitals to overflow. It's not causing health systems to crumble or to face stress. Does that make sense? So I would like to think that in, even maybe this year and then looking into next year, that we segue into a phase where this possibly just circulates around like influenza does. When November, December comes around, depending on where you are, or I should just say when your cold season starts, when your winter season starts. And even before that, you get vaccinated for, the current year's flu strain, making sure that you're protected. I would like to think that maybe that's where we're going to get with this situation, where we get vaccinated yearly for it and we prepare for that season. And again, being endemic, yes, you will have cases, you will have hospitalizations, you might even have some deaths here and there, but it's not to the degree that we are at right now.
With that people say from, hey, I did get the vaccine, but I did get sick, not realizing that the vaccine makes the symptoms less severe, but it doesn't make you immune. But we do see cases so now and then, basically breakthrough cases, where people do get very sick while they have the vaccine. But as far as I know, with the rates, they're quite low. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. So more than not, what you're going to see is that people who do have breakthrough, sometimes I wish we had a different word for it, because There's a difference between breakthrough infection and then with a breakthrough illness. And let me try and explain the difference between the two, because illness and infection sometimes are conflated. I'm not even going to say sometimes. Frequently, they're conflated together. Take, for example, I might walk around and let's just say that maybe I'm not wearing my mask when I should have been. Maybe I'm in a crowded room, it's poorly ventilated, and all of us aren't wearing masks, or all of us are just, sick and walking around each other. If I get infected and I maybe am facing no symptoms whatsoever, maybe I just test, maybe I'm just doing a routine test and I test positive, but I'm not experiencing any symptoms. That is technically an infection, but I'm not sick. I'm not spreading it. I'm not experiencing any symptoms. I'm not going to say that I'm not spreading it, because asymptomatic spread is the thing. I'm going to say I'm not walking around, coughing, sneezing, but I'm still positive. So therefore I am infected.
Yeah.
However, if I am experiencing some symptoms, I might have a cough, I might be sneezing, I might have a sore throat, that's an infection. If, however, let's say that you develop some complications along the way and you are hospitalized, or you end up, with a very severe case, that's considered illness. But the thing is that while that can happen, the cases of that, especially in people who have gotten boosted, it's very, very low. And that's the great thing. Even in the face of Omicron right now, or with variants circulating around, with a booster, the possibility of facing severe disease after being infected, your odds are very, very low. And we can see that when we look at these numbers that are put out, whether it's hospitalizations or it's deaths or it's cases, you always start to see that, especially with deaths and hospitalizations, those individuals who are in there, most of them are not vaccinated. So that means that vaccine is keeping people out of the hospital from facing severe disease and worse.
In the Netherlands, we do have a fairly strong movement of people that are skeptical about the whole situation. The Dutch government doesn't get the first prize when it comes down to proper response to the virus. There are roughly 50-50 when it comes down to vaccinated and unvaccinated people in the hospital. Could you explain it to someone who would come to you to the question from, hey, there are plenty of vaccinated people in the hospital as well?
So this is something that when we talk about this, we're talking about base fallacy rate.
Yeah.
So let's say that there's a really good example about this. Let's talk about New York. Let's talk about the fact that New York has a lot of yellow taxis. The majority of taxis in New York are the color yellow, but you also have some red taxis. Thing is, though, is that you still have more yellow than red. Okay, so you're watching the news one day and you see that there was an accident. You see that the car or the taxi that was in the accident was yellow and not red. Why is that? And then you see another one and another, and they're all yellow. And then one comes along and it's red. But the majority of the taxis in accidents are yellow. That's because you have more yellow taxis than you have red taxis. So in a population where you have the majority of your population vaccinated and a smaller portion of your population is not vaccinated, it's going to stand to reason that you're going to see more people that are either in the hospital or case-wise, they're going to be classified as just that. They're vaccinated.
Yeah.
So when it comes to populations like, let's take Portugal, for example. Portugal has a large amount of their population. I think it's like almost 90% or more than that now of their population vaccinated. So if you're looking at their hospitalizations, the majority of the people, if you're going to have any at all, you're going to find they're vaccinated. So that's kind of how this works. So unfortunately, you might have a lot of people out there who are against the vaccines that will look at this and they'll say, hey, look, check this out. More people in the hospital in this population are vaccinated. why is the number of unvaccinated individuals so small in the hospital? That's because their population has a small number of unvaccinated individuals. So it's really important when you look at the numbers that you look at the vaccination rates as well, because that's going to really tell you all that you need to know. You can't just look and say, hey, they've got more vaccinated people in the hospital than they do unvaccinated. No, you have to look at the population as a whole and then sit there and say how many people in the population are unvaccinated and then go from there. So it's something that I've seen commonly done, especially when you're looking at maybe numbers from, the UK and Sweden, and it's a little bit more difficult to do something like that in the US because we have a really good size of our population that is unvaccinated, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you're going to see our numbers look a little different compared to everyone else's because our vaccination rate isn't as high. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes the difference. You want to kind of pay attention to certain metrics, more so deaths and hospitalizations more than anything, because you can have cases, but are there deaths and hospitalizations on the floor? Means that vaccine is helping that population immensely and they have immunity. It's helping them out. But yeah, it's like I said, it's something that's really commonly done. It's a tool that a lot of people who are against these vaccines use. And then I'll have to come along, especially maybe somebody who's kind of nervous and is wondering why that is. And it's base rate fallacy. That's why.
Well, that's why I raised this question, because it is one that I have to answer quite a bit as well. And you always need to take the time in order to address the concern and actually look at the whole picture when it comes down to data. And I've seen this with various groups that they are leaving data out. But then again, statistics are often being manipulated. And this is not something that has been done lately. It has been done since mathematics have been incorporated in politics, and ever since then.
Exactly. And then now it's just become that much more, put under a microscope compared to before. So definitely something for people to keep in mind. Statistics can be very deceiving sometimes.
How did you get into the fandom? Because you told me a little bit about your career as a scientist, but you're also a furry. How did you end up in the fandom?
I've actually had a love for anthropomorphic animals since I was a kid. The thing is, though, is that I just was never aware that the fandom was even something that was around. I grew up watching Disney movies and, liking cartoon shows and would, write stories and draw and just really enjoyed it, but just never knew that anything like the fandom existed before. So back in 2015, a former coworker of mine was drawing and talking and, we expressed our interest in, things that we grew up with. And they were actually the ones that told me about the fandom existing. Back in the days of when, we used for affinity a lot more, they showed me that. And that kind of threw me into everything. I was just like, what is this? What is the fursona? What is the fursuit? What am I looking at? And it's almost like I fell headfirst into it because it was something that I had always loved, but just never knew existed on a scale like this.
You were just overwhelmed.
Yeah, to say the least. And I loved it. I have met so many wonderful people through the fandom. I've met so many friends. I met my partner through the fandom. It's amazing. It's so amazing. And now it's as if my world has crossed paths. My professional life, or I should say my personal life, has crossed paths with the fandom in this sense. Because I never expected that I would use my fursona to be able to communicate science to not only people in the fandom, but people outside of it as well. Some people are more accepting of it than others. You still get the occasional, person who kind of doesn't take you seriously or might say something that, almost is intended to try to hurt your feelings, obviously. But the thing is that when it's something that you love and it's something that you're comfortable with, people's comments just kind of go by the wayside, because there are plenty of people out there that are not in the fandom that are, much more open-minded and accepting to, understanding that, hey, she's got her fandom side, but at the same time, she sits there and she, tries to help people through this situation at the moment. So it doesn't matter to some people, but I just never ever expected that something like this would seep into my professional career and that I could help people through this with my persona.
Do you feel that combining your furry activities and your career in the current year, is this more accepted than it was like 10 years ago? Because, well, we have seen, of course, Uncle Kage, the other resident scientist in the fandom, so to speak. But I think that it is only recent that it really became a little bit more mainstream. What's your view on that?
I would say that it's become a little bit more mainstream compared to, like, for example, when I joined back in 2015. I definitely say that. And I say that because, media has had a big part of that. You see that there have been more documentaries, there have been more, news outlets that have come to talk to us. When I say mainstream, I'm not talking about the fact that, of like the furry fandom becoming commercialized or anything like that. When I'm referring to mainstream, I'm more so talking about the fact that maybe we've branched past the fandom and more people on the outside are interested in what we do or what we're about. There's one thing that really kind of like almost encourages me and makes me happy some days when I'll get messages from people and they'll say, I'm really glad that I found you and you really bring a light to the fandom and you show people that there's much more to us than they think that there is. There was always this stigma about furries, and furries were gross and they weren't cool and, they were cringe and, that kind of thing. And while you still have some people that might think that, I think more so now, like, people have started to change their feelings about us in that sense. Every group has a couple of people that it's just like, oh gosh, But I think on the whole, you can't just let, a couple of people speak for the fandom as a whole. There's so many more of us and there's so many good things to this fandom and there's so many bright people, artists, makers, lawyers, doctors, all kinds of things. The opportunity right now to show people that there's more to us than they think that there is.
Oh, and we are doing our best, both of us, to show the world that there's more to it. But this brings me to the next question. What so far has been the favorite moment or one of the favorite moments that you had in the fandom?
Okay, I'm gonna get a little bit mushy for a moment, so everybody's gonna have to bear with me. I would have to say it was meeting my partner. For the fact that we knew about each other and that the other existed, because, we've got furries have their outlets. We've got FA, we've got Twitter, we've got, all of that during that time. Twitter was a little bit new at the moment when we met. So FA was being used more frequently, Facebook kind of here and there, but Twitter was, fairly new and it was easier to talk to people. It's interesting because I think a lot of furries will go through this where you meet somebody online and you kind of have a long distance relationship for a little bit and then, the next convention's coming up and that's your chance to, meet your partner in person or meet the person that you're interested in person. Because he and I had run into each other numerous times, taking pictures and suit together, but never really knew each other. And so being able to do that, it was FWA 2017 was just one of the most amazing times of my life. I will never forget that convention, ever. And that's pretty much where everything started. So it's just like amazing moments like that. You can't put a price on it. It's something that you'll never forget.
Do you have a bucket list? Some things that you really still want to do?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to, of course, I would love to make some more breakthroughs when it comes to science in general. You know, working on vaccines right now, we have the opportunity where we're not just looking at, you know, vaccines for the current situation. We're looking at vaccines against HIV. We're looking at vaccines that'll, you know, help with a particular cancer. You know, CMV. We're looking at RSV. We're looking at all of these things. And if anything, my bucket list has a lot to do with what vaccine could I possibly work on next that is going to help someone that has been struggling for years, or what disease are we going to help, you know, ease on this time around. On my bucket list, I would love to be able to sit there and say, hey, I helped work on this vaccine, and this vaccine, you know?
Yeah, you quite literally have the power to change the world.
That's the great thing about science.
Yeah.
And the only other thing that I can think of, to be honest with you, that also might be on my bucket list is that once this situation is over, I would love to be able to travel again. I have dreams of traveling. There's so many more friends that I have met along the way, especially with everything going on right now, that, you know, people will tell me, come back to the UK, you know, come to Greece, come to Peru, come to Spain. I've had people who are sitting there and saying, hey, you know, if you ever find yourself in Australia, let me know. So many places. If anything, I look forward to the brighter days where people aren't living in fear so much with what's going on right now. So that kind of thing gets me through.
Is there any recommendation that you would give any new people that are joining the fandom?
So what I would recommend is, you know, first of all, I think a lot of people, when they're considering joining, some people are very nervous, you know, or like, let's say that they might have family members that aren't super accepting of, like, you know, their interests. They might feel a little bit ashamed. Don't. You know, life is short to the extent that if you're going to do something, do it. Enjoy it. You know, if this is an interest of yours, go into it. You know, I used to sit there and worry a lot about what people thought of me. And again, you know, it kind of brought up these feelings when you're in the professional field and, you know, you see people on Twitter who are looking at you and making fun of you for being in the furry fandom and trying to be a scientist and doing blah, blah, blah. And I say trying because they'll sit there and they'll say, oh, you know, what do you think you're doing? The thing is, though, is that you got to do what you love. If it's not hurting anybody, like, it's generally not hurting anybody. Being in the fandom isn't hurting anybody. You're doing something that you love, that you enjoy. Okay? You're meeting friends, you're meeting people. You know, it's a really lovely community to be a part of. Again, every community has some bad parts to it, but the majority of it is fantastic. So what I would recommend to people is, you know, go for it. Don't hesitate. If you want to be in the fandom and you want to take part in it, do it. Reach out to people, reach out to Discord groups, watch some YouTube videos, get on Twitter and start making friends. Talk to people. It's a great area to network. You know what I mean? You'll meet fantastic people in it, but don't be ashamed and don't be worried. You know, I promise that it's a very, very, very small minority of people that, you know, really make fun of people in the furry fandom. The thing is, most of us just don't really care anyway.
But I really enjoy talking to you, and I would like to thank you for your time in your extremely busy schedule. Maybe we will see you on the front page sometimes with a breakthrough that will change the world.
Oh, trust me, you will plan on seeing my face soon.
Thank you so much for sticking with us till the very end. As you might have noticed, things look a little bit different. I switched to new software and redid the entire layout. We started with the Furry Charity Index, and you might have noticed that some elements from there are appearing here as well. Besides the new layout, there are plenty of new ideas of what I'm going to do with this channel, and if you would like to support it, consider getting some of the merch from my store linked below. Or perhaps you can spare some coin on my Patreon or Subscribestar, like these amazing people: Cosmic with a K, Elsdekkers, Volcaneo, Hanzana, Ishnula, Kitako, Tentru McNally, Taros, and of course, Score Chaser. The next Digging Up Positivity will be on the 26th of February, and I really hope to see you there. Thank you all so much, and see you around, and remember, all the hugs!
Digging up positivity, digging up, digging up positivity, digging up, digging up, digging.